Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's Planning Applications Committee meeting on the 25th of July 2023. Agenda item number 1 is the Chair's welcome, which I'll just go through. I'd ask you to ensure that you're all signed in the sign-in sheet provided. These will be used in case of an evacuation. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Lloyds Bank building on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. This evening's meeting is not being live streamed. There are some issues with the live stream. However, it is being recorded and it will be put up onto the council's website for future usage. Please can I ask that if you have a mobile phone, that it is either turned off or at the very least turned on to silence for a duration of this meeting. Okay, could I also remind you, in terms of if you are a public participant, that you have 3 minutes in which to state your case. So if you are registered as one of our speakers, you will be accorded 3 minutes. I will allow you to go slightly over if you are at that point where you are concluding your statement, but I'm not going to sort of be extending, by 30 seconds to a minute. So please try to be brief once you hear the alarm going off. Can I also just remind people, I know there's going to be some very contentious issues tonight, as often there is on planning, and can I just remind people about the way we sort of talk to each other, whether it's to members of the planning committee or to members of highways or to the child services. Okay, we appreciate things can get heated. We know that people do get passionate and we're trying to get the right outcomes for everyone, but we can't do that if people are shouting or being abusive. Okay, that just doesn't help the process. So please, can I just remind everyone of the standards expected on that. Item number 2, apologies. I have 4 apologies from Councillors Wilson, Hartshorn, Shepherd and Shires. Thank you to Councillors Baxter Payne and Harbison for substituting for Councillors Wilson and Hartshorn respectively. That's really appreciated. Item number 3, the minutes. Hopefully members have had a chance to study the minutes. Is there any issues that I should be aware of before I sign them off? No, are you all happy that I signed those minutes as a true and accurate record? Yeah, okay, thank you. Item number 4, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest they would like to declare? Councillor Baxter Payne. Sorry, just getting glare from your sign.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, my interests aren't published in the agenda because I'm a substitute, but I'm not sure if it's been updated yet. But if it hasn't, my employment has recently changed and I'm now employed by Vinci Construction.
Okay, thank you. That's duly noted. Councillor Markham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to advise that I am portfolio for Children's Services at Warwickshire County Council in regards to items 1 and 2, but I've had no input into either one of those. Just advise you that. Okay, thank you. Do I have any other? Yes, Councillor Tromans. I know you're not on the committee, but we'll hear what you've got to say anyway.
Thank you, Chair. I need to declare an interest. I feel it's not a pecuniary one, so I think there's a legal obligation, but although I'm speaking as ward councillor, it is to object on behalf of residents to item 1. And item 1 is located in the road I live on. I'm not directly impacted, but it is further down the road, and I just wanted to be transparent about that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Councillor. That's much appreciated. If I've got no other declarations of interest, item 5 brings us to declarations of contact. Councillor Markham.
Yeah, thank you. I've actually had contact with a member regarding both of these applications. I haven't expressed an opinion either one way or the other. I've also had several emails from the same person.
Yeah. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, same thing. It's pretty general. I think we've all probably had emails, certainly from a member. I've also had several conversations with our MP, Marcus Jones, who's also an objector, but I haven't given any indication.
Can I just confirm everyone else has had the same contacts? Yeah, okay, so that's all of us then. Okay, so that's the declarations of contact done. So that moves us then on to the consultation. I'm going to hand on over to Darren now, our officer, who will talk us through the first item.
I'll just wait for Maria to switch the feed over so you can see what I'm showing you. Thanks very much, Chair. As members will recall, this application was presented at a previous committee and deferred by members in order to establish the need for the children's home and to allow for a member of Warwickshire Children's Service to attend. The proposal is for a change of use from a residential dwelling, C3, to a children's home, Class C2, and would provide care for up to 4 children aged between 8 and 18 years. As part of the change of use, all bedrooms would be retained, 4 for the children and one as a staff bedroom. Numerous objections have been received from local residents, as detailed on the agenda. In terms of the principle of development, the site is located within an established residential estate in Nuneaton. Nuneaton has the primary role for employment, housing, the town centres, leisure and service provision within the borough. Policy DS2 states that the most development will be directed to Nuneaton as the primary town. The site is also located within the settlement boundary and is therefore in accordance with Policy DS3. Policy H1 of the Borough Plan states that the development proposals for specialised housing, such as this one, will be approved where a local need can be demonstrated. Within their responses, Warwickshire County Council have stated that there is a need for children's homes placements in the county, and specifically within Nuneaton. It should be noted that it cannot be guaranteed that this home, if it were to be approved, would be used for children through the County Council care framework to specifically meet the county's need. Within Warwickshire County Council's application for a change of use from C3 to C2 on Staines Close in April of this year, it was stated that 72 Warwickshire children are in residential care placements and that 25 originate from this borough. At present, only 5 of the total of those 72 children are looked after in Warwickshire itself. This is less than 7%, with the remaining majority, 93%, being cared for out of the county. Having homes located in areas where there is need enables children to maintain stability in other areas of their lives. For example, consistent support from family and friends, education provisions, and access to other universal and specialist support services. Therefore, it's considered that there are clear social benefits associated to the scheme. Whilst some residents have stated that children's homes could be a commercial use and should not be located in residential areas, it should be clarified that a C2 use class such as this one is for a residential institution, and as such, this type of residential use is appropriate to be located within an established residential area. The Minister of State for Housing and Planning produced a statement in May of this year to advise local authorities regarding accommodating looked after children. The document states that the planning system should not be a barrier to providing homes for the most vulnerable children in society. When care is the best choice for a child, it is important that the care system provides stable, loving homes to children's communities. The statement also refers to the Ofsted registration process as set out in the Guide to Children's Home Regulations under the Care Standards Act 2000. It is an offence to run a children's home without the appropriate registration. This requirement to register helps to prevent unsuitable people from owning, operating or managing children's homes. In relation to residential amenity, the proposal would provide accommodation for up to 4 children with 3 members of staff at any one time. Some concerns have been raised by residents with regard to safety, noise or loss of privacy, all of which are considerations which may impact residential amenity. With regard to noise generated from the comings and goings, a very similar application was refused and overturned on appeal in January of this year in Burnley. The inspector there stated that given the scale of the proposal, which is similar to this one, the noise and disturbance associated with the comings and goings would not be disproportionate or significantly above what could be reasonably expected to be generated by a normal 5-bedroom dwelling. Environmental health have been consulted and have no objection. As such, it is considered that noise impacts associated with the change of use are at an acceptable level. Some objections have raised concerns that the children living in the proposed facility could represent a threat to local children and may attract criminals and antisocial behaviour. Warwickshire Police have been consulted and have no objection. In addition, the management of the facility would be required to operate within the national standards for children's homes, and staff would be subject to Ofsted regulation and inspections. Children will be looked after by staff members, and therefore it is considered that sufficient safeguards are in place to minimise the risk of crime for local children and future occupants. In terms of highway safety, parking standards require 1 space per 4 residents and 1 space per 2 full-time staff members. However, when considering that this is to be a children's care home, it is not considered necessary to provide parking for the children, as children are unlikely to drive or own a car. Warwickshire County Council Highways agree that the children are unlikely to drive themselves, so consideration should be given only to the staff parking. 2 parking spaces are provided currently, and this would be sufficient for the 3 staff members and 1 home manager on shift at any one time. And this accords with the adopted standards. However, a 3rd and 4th space could be provided on site on the existing grassed area and driveway if needed, in front of which would therefore exceed the standards of the SPD. Condition 4 on the agenda has been added to ensure that 4 spaces are provided in accordance with the submitted plan. The County Council Highways have reviewed the proposals and have no objections subject to conditions. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to conditions as set out on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darren. I now have several speakers on this matter, so we'll take them in the order that they come. So the first person speaking the objection is Ms. Barbara Quick. Ms. Quick? So you have your 3 minutes when you're ready, Ms. Quick.
The planning statement stated that this property had previously been used as a foster home. This is incorrect. It has a non-residential childcare facility for under 5s and was only allowed 2 children at any one time, hence conversion of garage. There seems to be a sudden surge of these types of applications and approval by Nuneaton Planning Department to convert residential properties to children's homes. If there is such a shortage of places in Nuneaton and Bedworth, why, when improving all the new house building projects, that the council are not making it a condition that occasionally this type of facility is built and they have to for social housing? It gives out conflicting decisions that we need more residential properties in the area, but you are allowing residential ones to be removed from the market circulation to change to child facility, which then causes concern and anxiety to local residents who have built up communities. A resident in St Ives Way runs a nursery on St Nicholas Park, pointed out recruiting and retaining staff is very difficult. It has taken her 6 months to employ someone with right qualifications and skills, as it is such a specialist market and a small pool of people, so this venture will have detrimental effect on area. I see Mr Sidhu has advertised a manager's position. I would be interested to know how successful he has been, as it is not Ofsted registered and this is his first venture. When we heard this at a previous meeting, this caused further anxiety and consternation among residents and surrounding area as to how long it will take to have property in use and calibre of staff, as if left unoccupied for long periods of time could be a safety issue if approved. There have never been more than 1 or 2 children resident in the properties until 2 years ago, who have 3 born since moving in. To say this property will run like a normal family home, which by nature will be from different homes, it is an assumption that it won't cause extra traffic, as I don't know of any family that run a home as envisaged by this property. Current movements average about 8 a day. Having had personal experience of care system which never had a good outcome, upon receiving letter have a devastated effect on my neighbour and myself, and if approved, we have made the decision after living in St Ives Way, since built, to sell up and move as number 5 is a serving midwife of 50 years at George Eliot Hospital. You will be losing her valued skills. In conclusion, when making decisions, perhaps some consideration should take on impact on local communities, not just policy directives and laws. I assure you the residents of St Ives Way will not embrace this venture into our close-knit community and strongly object to it.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms Quick. Can I ask any members of the committee, does anyone have any points of clarification they would like to ask? No? Okay, in that case, I'll go on to our second speaker, which is Councillor Rob Tromans. So, Councillor Tromans, when you're ready.
Yeah, if I could just ask a question. I know fortunately we've managed to get Director Minns here from Warwickshire County Council. It might be helpful if I heard what he has to say before making my comments, because they may have some bearing on that. That might be, if that's in order with the committee.
Okay, that's not normally something we do. So normally the last word always goes to the applicant. To the applicant. But because Director Minns isn't registered to speak, I don't see how we would get him on unless he wants to make some sort of a statement or answer some questions now. I mean, it's not normally something we would do at all, Councillor Tromans. So, I mean, I would ask you to speak, and, you know, if there are questions, I would suggest that you perhaps make them towards the Planning Applications Committee and suggest that they are questions they themselves might wish to ask and lead on, as follows.
Thank you, Chair. I'll follow that advice. So, members of the committee are well aware, virtually every other resident in St Ives Way has objected to this, including the people that it backs onto. Our MP, who is tackling serious ASB and problems at another private care home, has also raised objections here. This application, if granted, would cause serious detriment to local residents and the local community. Primarily, it's going to deny local children places at already oversubscribed schools. So if the schools are all, matter of record and fact, oversubscribed in that area, looked after children have an automatic right to those places, that would displace at least 3-4 children from the local community, and they will get worse outcomes as a result by not being able to go to school with their friends and neighbours and being pushed out of area. It will also impact on the peaceful enjoyment of the, as you've heard, entirely elderly population immediately around it and the largely older and retired and grown-up people around there. It is not a neighbourhood and a road that has got lots of children in or that would fit in. Half of it is bungalows for the very, very elderly. The rest of it, as we've heard, Barbara, widow on her own, very elderly people the other side, grown-up families, middle-aged people, to put it politely, the rest of it. So it would be incongruous. It would not be a fit in the area. It would be incongruously introducing what is in effect a busy commercial premises to what is an entirely residential street and an entirely residential area in the roads around it. When we're talking about traffic movements, we can see there, you know, the application's completely flawed. It said, oh, no additional works are necessary, but it shows 4 cars there. We can only get 2 on now, and you'll get 3 on if you tarmac over the grass. But the officers have had to put the condition in for 4 and tarmacking over the grass because the applicant hadn't done that. It's completely flawed. It's just a try on as far as I can see. We would be looking at 3 members of staff all travelling there, 3 shifts a day. That's that's 12 already. Then you're talking about the trips to take the kids to and from school, another 18. You're talking about visitors. You're talking about inspections, shopping, taking children on trips to places to, you know, sports things or whatever. You could easily be talking 40, 50 movements a day. That ain't far off what that whole road produces. It's only 20 houses. So, you know, that's a significant additional amount of traffic to add to Camborne Drive, to add to St Ives Way. It's also going to take out a property, out of a family property, size property, out of the housing stock in an area that's already struggling to deliver it. We've got a borough plan that's struggling to come up with these numbers of this kind of house, and we're going to take one out for no reason, because there isn't a need for it. It's also going to cause a lot of issues in terms of The privacy, but Safe by Design requires commercial CCTV. It's a poor location because it's squeezed in between a load of houses in the middle of a road. We know what good looks like in Nuneaton. Private homes are in Nuneaton, and good ones. We have more than our fair share for Warwickshire, and we have more in Warwickshire than Warwickshire have children to fill them. Look off Wagstaff, there's Forge Care there, discreet private turning, doesn't know immediate neighbours, purpose-built properties, nobody's inconvenienced by it in any way. The need is not here locally. The county is already opening Staines Close, which it has bought. Director Minns tells me they've bought another one last week in the area that already has C2 permission. This would be to pile the agony on in an area that is already giving over provision. And as you may have already seen,
Can you start winding up, please, Councillor Tromans?
We have more places, 92 on Warwickshire County Council's list currently, and Warwickshire need to place in Warwickshire, not including the ones in their own homes and whatever, about 70 odd of those. So we've already got sufficient provision.
Councillor
and there are plans in
Tromans,
place
you've
to
gone
provide
well
more.
over the 3 minutes now, so I will...
We do not need this. There is no need in the area. Please see the harm. Please turn this application down. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Tromans. Can I ask any members, do you have any points of clarification that you wish to make? No? Okay, so we'll then move on to our final speaker on this matter, which is Mr Sidhu, who represents the Centauri Group. So, Mr Sidhu, you have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I extend my gratitude to Councillor Shears for her insightful comments at the last committee meeting. I must address the letters from Councillor Troman. Regrettably, before today, Councillor Troman has failed to disclose his vested interest in the application, just living 3 doors away from number 7.
Point of order, Mr Chairman. I have declared at every stage, everything I have written to the council, it has been quite clear I'm a resident of St Ives, and I've made that point. So I'm going to ask for that to be withdrawn.
There are no points of order to be made at this kind of meeting. Okay, it is noted. I would ask Mr Sidhu if we can stick to points that are actually related to the application, not to what Councillor Tromans is or isn't and what his declarations are. Okay.
That's fair enough.
We're really interested just hearing about the sort of proposals and the planning side of things. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm addressing the letters that have been sent. 2 lots of. Anyway, his attempts to mislead the committee are concerning. Councillor Troman cited contradictory information from John Coleman, Director of Children and Family Services. Despite now claiming that he has been misled by Warwickshire County Council, he continues to use misleading figures and baseless claims. The official position of Warwickshire County Council, clearly outlined in the Planning Officer's reports available before each meeting, contradicts Councillor Troman's claims. I personally contacted Mr Coleman to verify Councillor Troman's claims. He clearly stated that it is not the position of the County Council that they have 12 times more vacant private children's placements available more than they require. He sent me a copy of the briefing provided to the councillor. After reading the briefing and the information sent to the councillor, I am at a loss as to how such clear and concise information can be misinterpreted, then spun into 2 separate letters of defamatory and misleading statements, including misquoting a government minister for the council's own personal agenda. It is disappointing that at the last meeting, undue weight was given to Councillor Troman's claims, which contradicted and undermined a senior planning officer, Warwickshire County Council and its directorate. The Minister Rachel McLean's statement should be read in its entirety and in full context to understand what she's actually saying. One should not be cherry-picking certain words out of context to serve personal agendas. It appears Councillor Troman lacks understanding of critical regulations and requirements for residential children's homes. The councillor states numerous times about the right kind of building in the right place. It is obvious from the council's comments he has absolutely no understanding of the children's home regulations and quality standards, location risk assessments and their critical criteria, the Childcare Act for looked after children and young people, or in fact any of Ofsted's legal requirements for looked after children and young people. Councillor Troman's justifications based on mathematics overlook the need of the vulnerable children involved, needing support and protection away from exploitation, regardless of where they originated from. These children are not throwaway numbers to be used to support a personal agenda. Placing vulnerable children away from their homes is necessary for a plethora of reasons, including safeguarding, considering risks such as sexual exploitation, gang crime, neglect and abuse. I urge the committee to consider the true facts provided by the authoritative bodies and approve the application for the benefit of all children and young people needing residential placements. In conclusion, I quote the Minister's words, "The planning system should not be a barrier to providing homes for the most vulnerable children in society." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sidhu. I would just like to point out that Councillor Tromans did not actually affect the last meeting because it was deferred. So there was no judgment reached either way. So actually that was a slightly false statement, which I would just like to go on record as saying. I'll now turn to councillors. Has anyone got any points of clarification they'd like to ask Mr. Sidhu? No? Okay, so in that case then we have a proposal in front of us to recommend to grant planning permission subject to the conditions printed. Do I have a proposer and a seconder to enable us to move to the discussion? So Councillor Smith and Councillor Green. Okay, so we'll now move to the discussion. Obviously, we also have with us here tonight from Child Services, Mr. Min. So if there are questions of clarification which you would like to ask of him, now is your opportunity. Okay, Councillor Smith.
You've taken the words out of my mouth. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Minns here. And I've heard a lot of objections. We always, on these issues, have a lot of objections. And very often, they're the fear of what might be, who might reside there. That isn't a planning issue for us. And to be fair, we can't choose our neighbours. So anyone can buy that house, move in with 4 feral kids, and cause mayhem. The fact these are looked after kids should make no difference. But I will go straight to Mr. Minns. There's been much conversation around the need for these homes, and I've looked into it a bit. I do have a sense that it's the system that's broke a little bit. Our planning policies are quite clear that we should look favourably upon these for local need. But it seems like in terms of, and I've asked for legal advice on this, for us to condition that this is only for local need wouldn't pass an inspector because it would take away the competition element of what's already in the marketplace. So can I just ask you to clarify and talk a little bit about what the need is and where Warwick County Council's opinion is on this and a bit of guidance in terms of the planning element rather than the emotional element.
Thank you I'm more than happy to do that. For those who don't know, my name is Nigel Minns. I am the Executive Director for People at Warwickshire County Council, which includes the statutory post of Director of Children's Services. For a bit of context, we have about 800 children in care in Warwickshire. As has been indicated to the committee previously, there are a number of methods by which we accommodate those children, and there is a kind of preference. So wherever possible, we accommodate them with family and friends. Where that's not possible, foster care is usually the option. For a small number or a number of those who are over 16, so 16 and 17-year-olds, there is a supported accommodation option as well. Those 3 options accommodate about 90% of children in care. That remains a group of about 10%, it's around 8, it's actually 79 today, who require residential accommodation. Just to give a bit of context, this is just to show this is not a static group of young people. So in the last 3 years, Warwickshire County Council has taken into care around 1,000 children, and around 1,000 children have left care during that time. So the 800 you see today, some of them are the same children, but lots of them aren't. And that is equally true for the residential cohort. So as I said, we have 79 children in care today who are in residential provision. At today's figures, 12 of those are resident within Warwickshire, and 67 are located outside the county. There is a slight confusion in the regulations, I suppose, around in-county and out-of-county, because there is actually guidance children should be placed within 20 miles of their home. But obviously 20 miles quite often crosses county boundaries. So to give an example of the children located in Warwickshire who are not Warwickshire children, 10 of them are from Coventry. Similarly, we place children in Coventry. In many cases, those children are closer to their homes, even though they're outside the county, than they would be if they were placed, for example, in Ulster, say, at the other end of the county. We have similar situations around the borders with Worcestershire, with Gloucestershire, Oxfordshire, Northamptonshire, Leicestershire, and Solihull, South Staffordshire. So there's a mix. In the documentation that was provided to the committee, I think, and was provided to Councillor Tromans around existing homes which are known to us in the county, they indicated at the time, I believe, that there were 71 registered beds and 21 due to open at that time, leading to an expectation that by now there would be 92 registered beds. And I use the term really carefully, and I will come back to it in a second. My understanding as of today is that 2 of those homes are not yet open. We don't have a date for when they're open or whether they'll open. So actually the figure we should probably be talking about today is 84. You will kind of note that 84 is very close to the figure of 79 children we have currently in residential care. The reason I refer to registered beds is because the fact that when a children's home is registered, it is registered for the maximum number of children it can take. That doesn't necessarily mean it relates to the maximum number of children or the number of children that the provider intends to place. So Ofsted frequently tell us there is an increasing number of children's homes which register with 2, 3 or 4 places where the provider only intends ever to take 1. But also there are a large number where they plan to take 2 or 3. So actually the number of beds available is not 84, it is a proportion of that figure. And that takes the number well below the number of children we have in residential care from Warwickshire. Added to that, there are further complexities. So there are a number of reasons why homes might be restricted in the number of children they take. It could be, as I said, an intention. It could be a staffing issue. Homes cannot operate understaffed, so they can't take children if they don't have the appropriate staffing complement. And also, at times, Ofsted, as part of their inspection processes, restrict the number of children who can be placed in a particular home. So they have a power to issue a directive to say you may only take or you may only keep this number of children, and actually you need to find another, or the local authority who places that child needs to find another place for that child. The most awkward of those arrangements is where Ofsted go in to inspect a home, maybe which has been previously outstanding for years, judge it to be inadequate, and they ask the local authorities to remove those children and place them elsewhere the same day. Because of that requirement, and there is always a requirement to place children immediately, you need a surplus capacity, not just a direct match. There are 2 further complications that I need to add in. Homes have a statement of purpose. They may only take a certain type of child, a child with a certain need or a certain level of need, certain age range, for example. There is also an expectation that children are able to live happily, successfully together in a home. So there is a process which is known, horribly I think in my view, as matching, where you can't place a child in a home with children who it wouldn't be appropriate for them to live in. So for example, if you had a 12-year-old girl that you wanted to place and a home had a vacancy but had 3 16-year-old boys in there, you might well decide that's not an appropriate placement for that child. Similarly, if you had a child who could be a little bit boisterous, but you had a child with a type of autism where they were very high sensory needs, you couldn't place that child with that child. So there are a whole range of reasons. So that means that the number of beds actually available on a day-to-day basis is very low. And you need to have a surplus of places in an area. We don't have a surplus at the moment in terms of actual places available, even if we did have, in terms of registered places. But even then, as I say, we don't have sufficient, never mind a surplus. There was something else that I was going to add that's just gone from my head. I haven't talked about out-of-county children. All of that assumption is that no other child from any other local authority is placed within the county. And of course, we know that that's not the case. Children's homes are private businesses. Your legal advice would be my dream position. In that I would love it if you could give permission for a children's home to be opened, but only to take Warwickshire children. It would be perfect for me. But unfortunately, we can't do that. Children's homes are private businesses. They have a right to trade, if you like, with whoever they choose to trade with. And in reality, that often means the highest bidder. Because of the nature of the market, the moving in, moving out, you cannot usually acquire a bed for a long period. You place a child, as long as that child is there, assuming the home doesn't give notice, they stay there. When they leave, that's not your place to find somebody else. The home then starts the process again to look at who is the right person that they want to match into that home. So the county has three, effectively, approaches to addressing the shortage of need. And I should just say the shortage of need is a national problem as well as a local one. The Competition Markets Authority last year had a detailed, in-depth look at this process and described it as a broken market. The Children's Care Review, led by Josh McAllister, said something very similarly and again used the words a broken market. If central government were ever to legislate to restrict the movement of children around the country in this way, again, our situation would change entirely. And it's something that the Association of Directors of Children's Services has asked for repeatedly. So until that time, we have a three-pronged approach, if you like. One is, as Councillor Troman has mentioned, to open our own children's homes. We are planning to open a total of, well, we have permission from council at the moment to open 4. We are hoping to make that 5. That's because, as Councillor Troman has mentioned, there came an opportunity for us to purchase a small home, which is in Bedworth, which will be used as a emergency placement home, so we can actually place those children. It will only be for a single child, where we have a situation, as I described, where a child needs to be placed at short notice. We can place them there while we find them a longer-term solution. In total, then, we will look to create 22 beds, which will be run directly by the council. Our second approach is to work with providers to bring them into the area who we want to work with, who we have a relationship with. Again, Councillor Troman's mentioned Forge Care. It's a matter of public record that not only did the County Council work with Forge Care, but we lent them a significant amount of money in order to build the provision that they have built, or to help them to build it. We didn't lend them all the money. And then our third approach is to encourage the opening of a number of privately run homes to add to the overall capacity. And obviously this home would fall into that kind of group of the three, if you like. And I think that's probably enough from me.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Minns, for that very insightful response. Councillor Smith, have you got any follow-up questions or statements you'd like to make?
Yeah, probably quite a lot in my head, but I can't remember them all. No, thank you for that. That was very clear and concise. And I think for the whole committee, it's very good to have that insight, because these do pop up quite regularly. And what we've just learnt now will help us guide in future. Do you ever see a point in the very near future where, when you're asked, is there need locally, your response will be, no, I don't think we have any unmet need?
It's a really difficult question. I certainly don't think this can be an ever-increasing problem. So I think, as I've said, our national market, a large number of local authorities across the country are taking the decision, like we are, to build their own homes. A number in the West Midlands are doing that as well as others, which will increase the overall capacity in the market, which then should reduce the need for other local authorities to place out of county. So that will definitely help. We have a number of strategies and approaches in place to actually reduce the number of children who need care in the first place, more opportunities to support children at home, so that again should reduce the care. If you go back about 5 or 6 years, we had quite a lot less need than we have at the moment in terms of where we are. These things do tend to move up and down in waves and cycles. So if we do the right things about reducing the number of children in care, and the market does the right thing in terms of the sufficiency, I would expect that we will get to that point at some point. I also still do have hope of legislation in this area, which is something that is flagged up in the government's response to the care review.
Supplementary then, this time, based on what we've heard, this time it's to Assistant Director Bailey. Given what we've heard, given the position of Warwick County Council in terms of need, the only other issue I can see in terms of whether we approve or reject this application would be residential amenity. Now that's been looked at, and from the presentation, I think the planning officers are quite comfortable in terms of residential amenity, and we can't pick our neighbours, whoever they are. So based on what you've heard, if this were refused, is there any defensible thing you could do on those two issues? Because it will go to appeal if it's refused, almost certainly. Is there any defence you can offer in terms of those issues or any other issue if it went? Could we actually go and defend a refusal?
Thank you, Chair. The quick answer to that is no. Obviously, it is an evidence-based planning system. Your officers have written this report based on the evidence in front of them, the evidence of need, the evidence from other appeal decisions in terms of noise and disturbance, etc. So no, there is nothing that your officers could defend at appeal in terms of planning policy.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's pretty much as I thought. Just as a final on that, if we refuse it and it's not defensible, presumably we'll land costs. They'd automatically be awarded, presumably, in which case we're in for a big bill that we don't have a budget for, by the sound of it.
Cost awards are often judged on whether an authority has been seen to act reasonably in their decision making, and obviously then it goes back to the evidence. The inspectorate will look at the evidence, and if the authority has seen to have not taken into account appropriate evidence, then yes, we are more than likely to have costs against us, although obviously that is not a material planning consideration.
I've got to caution slightly that we shouldn't be thinking first and foremost about the money. Although yes, I appreciate it is something we probably have in the back of our minds. But what we should have at the forefront is the training that all members of the Planning Application Committee have received in terms of matters planning, and they should be basing their decision on that. And if they feel it's appropriate to do so, then they should. Obviously, we've got people who have various experiences, and I'd lead you to just remember to think about what the planning arguments are, because that's what we're considering. Everything else, okay, we need to be, although mindful of, what shouldn't be really influencing the main bulk of the decision, which I think is just important to sort of say, because I know often we hear this about, costs. And, I know sometimes members of the public think that's used to scare us from making the decision when it shouldn't be. It should be about the legality of the decision we make based on planning rules and regulations.
Absolutely agree. I'll listen to what others have to say and make a decision based on that.
Yeah, I've got two more people who have shown hands while you speak. So Councillor Hammersley, then Councillor Cape.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, as a scrutiny panel, us keeping an open mind for all sides, but we are presented with, when we are presented with no objections from Highways, no objections from MBBC, the Health, Police, etc., etc., we have to consider in our judgment, but also we have to consider neighbours' responses as well from where there is lots of grey areas, I'll call them, which put lots of assumptions in from the neighbours. And it does say increase in antisocial behaviour. Well, we don't really know this until the people are put there. We don't know what type of people they are, and we can't class them all with the same brush. Devaluing the property prices, well, again, that's an option. It may, but it may not. The assumption of the ages of the people, which we don't really know at this stage ages are. Noise disturbances, until they're in, we won't be able to assess the noises, and we have environmental people that can deal with noises. And the house, it says, is not suitable for a number of occupants. Well, this may be checked prior to anyone going in anyway. The applicant doesn't live at the property. I'm not sure how this matters or doesn't matter. The planning statement is not accurate, but I'm not sure what the inaccuracies are. If somebody could tell me, I'm prepared to listen, whatever those are. And again, the current refuse bins may not be sufficient, but they can apply for more. And then putting my boot on the other foot, if there's no trained staff to work at the premises, there will be no children at the premises. Again, it's another assumption if staff are available. It has been commented that staff are sparse in that area. And if Ofsted say, no, it's not suitable, again, this hasn't been determined at the moment, so it's another assumption if they will determine it to be suitable or not. So that there are lots of grey areas for me to make this decision, is if or isn't it suitable for the use that's been proposed. So I have to give this a lot of thought. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hammersley. Councillor Cape.
Okay. I could probably have shouted, but then it wouldn't have been recorded. Thanks very much to the director, because I found that very illuminating and very informative. And also thank you for the reminder about the training that we all did, because on one hand, we've got to weigh up the legal facts that were presented by the professional planning team, statutory guidance, etc., which I've listened to. For me, it is definitely a national issue, and I feel for any of the children that are placed in a position of needing to get home. A lot of the objections that Councillor Hammersley raised, I didn't even consider, because I knew that they were not sole planning considerations. So I'm getting there. The planning consideration I'm going to ask about is, it didn't appear in the report about materially changing the nature of the neighbourhood, because we've factually heard that there's no guarantee it is addressing a local need, but it might. So that is the grey area that was mentioned. So could I just have an explanation as to why it's considered that this will not materially change the character of that neighbourhood?
Thanks, Chair. That's essentially because it's still a residential use fundamentally. Obviously, there's certain specifics as to who's living there in terms of children and staff. But fundamentally, it's people living in a house, and that's a residential use in a residential area. Thanks, Chair.
I think just to add to that, Chair, obviously we have no control over who would live in that property in the existing residential use in terms of whether those people moving in might materially affect the character of the area. You know, in terms of, obviously, at the moment, there is a lot of elderly people. We all know that, obviously, the communities change, younger age groups come through, etc. But it's not something that we can take account of in planning.
Thanks. In that, thank you for that response from both of you, but from the initial response, the argument seemed to be that we can't choose our neighbours, and I totally accept that. You know, it is a little bit of fortune and chance, and then you have to build good relationships with them, and I'm sure that the residents would build good relationships with whoever moved in. However, for me, the big distinction here is it might be a residential use, but it's still a business which is going to be addressing a national need, because it's not been demonstrated that it's going to meet a local need. And so therefore, I'm kind of a bit uncomfortable with it, because you can't compare a family moving in with a business being established in the area. But there again, that's just my reasonable decision. It's not legal, it's not statutory, but we were actually told that we've also got to take our reasonable, what would an average person think about this? And that's my average person's thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cope. Do I have any other members? Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I've been very interested, certainly, sorry, I forget your name, that gentleman has to say about the care system. I can say I'm an SEN governor at my school, so I've got, with particular interest, we looked after children. So I am absolutely passionate about them getting the best care possible. However, in other considerations, I look at what the Minister for State and Housing said. These homes need to be in the right places with good schools and community support. I've heard today there is absolutely no community support for this whatsoever. I'm still not convinced that there's actually a specific need for this, whatever. I've listened intently to the figures provided. Maybe it's some failing on my part, but you've not been able to demonstrate to me fully the absolute need for this home from a brand new start-up business with no experience whatsoever in looked after children whatsoever in this location. So I'm finding it very, very difficult to be able to support this application.
Councillor Harbison.
I completely share the view that we need this provision. I can understand that there needs to be a place for it somewhere, but like Councillor Green's just said, I don't feel as though there's actually any community support for this at all. Unfortunately, sometimes these things happen, and if there's no support for it from the start, I can't see any continuing goodwill, and therefore, from an outsider's point of view, for me, it seems that I wouldn't be able to support this application because of the local community's feelings on this, and it's quite simple. So, thank you.
Do I have any other speakers on this? Councillor Smith, is that... No, sorry, Director Bailey.
Thank you. Obviously, you will be aware, members, we do not get support for any of these applications, and we are going to see a lot of applications coming to you. Just bear in mind, again, going back, and I know, Councillor Green, you don't feel like the need has been evident strongly. I would advise you from as your professional officer, it has. And obviously, there was a deferral last time to take account of that, and very strongly the County Council came back. And I think, you know, I very much felt that they were questioning why I was doubting them. So there is the evidence of need. I think if you are looking that we only approve applications of this nature where there is support, then we won't be approving any of these applications, and therefore won't be meeting the need that is there.
Thank you. I'd say a couple of things on this as well now, because I've listened intently to what everyone said, and I appreciate a lot of what's been said. So it's a very controversial development, but then all developments are. And I would say, first of all, in terms of what the Minister said, well, has that been written down? Is that on the statute books as a law, or is it one of the many things that ministers are just actually saying? Because there is a big difference between the two. Formal statement, though, isn't the same as going in front of Parliament and getting something approved, but it's not been approved, has it, at this point in time, as far as I'm aware? What she said.
It's a statement of policy by the department.
Right. That's not how I understood it to be. I don't know if anyone can clarify on that.
I think Councillor Tromans is correct.
Right, okay, I'll stand corrected then. Thank you, Councillor Tromans, because that obviously is good to know. So that was the first point. Good. I'm glad we got that clarified then. Second point, yeah, we can't choose our neighbours in terms of who we have living in or around us, okay? And sort of allowing neighbours to vet who and they do or don't want to live in. I think it's a very dangerous thing to do. I was sat objecting myself a couple of weeks ago to something that was going on in my street, so HSG 7, where they were going to build 200 houses, and the cul-de-sac where I lived in was going to have 97 extra houses accessing a cul-de-sac with 13 houses. So I appreciate where you're all coming from on that. And if it went down to my neighbours would have all said no, and that would have been the end of the matter. However, we've got to apply the thinking of the committee based on the laws and rules that we've been taught about planning. So we need to sort of bear those in mind. They need to be to our uppermost. They may not always be what we want, but there's something that's there. I'd also like to ask Mr. Minns as well, something regarding Ofsted, because I know Miss Quick, I think you mentioned it in your statement about Ofsted. Could you just explain slightly, if you could, how Ofsted would go about safeguarding and ensuring that conditions were met properly in terms of a standard being applied and what that standard would look like? And I'm sure they wouldn't be allowed to just move children straight in. They'd have to be Ofsted compliant, and how that would all work. So that's something you could sort of shed some light on.
Certainly an outline. So you're right, all homes, well, it is illegal to carry on a children's home without it being properly registered by Ofsted. So there is a lengthy application process at which Ofsted do a significant number of checks. The starting point is you must have in place a registered manager before you can even apply. That registered manager must be qualified and suitably experienced and has to be approved as well as the home being approved. Ofsted then carry out, they require a location assessment to look at whether the location is suitable for a children's home. They expect that to include feedback from people like the police, local children's services departments, health providers, etc. They will then do visits to the home to check that it is suitable before it is allowed to open. They will check that you have the right staffing in place, that staffing numbers are appropriate, all those kind of things. They then inspect homes on a regular basis, much more regularly than they expect, for example, schools, to ensure that those standards are being maintained. If they don't think they're being maintained, the two options to them really are, as I said earlier, to restrict the number of children in the home so that actually it's an easier institution to manage, or to actually close it and say, actually, you can't take children until this, that, or the other has happened. If a home is on one of our contracted by us, and I'm not, I'm not talking about this home specifically, in any home, or on our frameworks, then obviously there are additional quality assurance checks that sit alongside that as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Minns. Yeah, that was really helpful to know that there is a quality assurance sort of process in place by Ofsted. So before any children will actually move in, there'll be a number of steps that have to be undertaken, a number of hoops that Centauri Group will have to sort of jump through. Sorry, you're not registered to speak on this, so I can't, I'm afraid, allow you to talk on the matter. So I don't see any other speakers on this matter. I would just remind you, though, if you do refuse, then you'll need to give me a reason, because we'll obviously have to give a reason why we're refusing this application, because officers are to be guided by us, as you're well aware on this. So the recommendation before us is to grant planning permission to change from a C3 residential dwelling to a C2 children's home, subject to the conditions as printed. So all those a favour of approving...
Chair, may I interject? Point of order, and this is under the Constitution, a point of order to protect the council from legal challenge or doing something that might breach some relevant law. We need to be clear and into the record, because there may be legal challenge either way, exactly what the basis is that's being voted on. We have just heard the corrected information from Director Minns. It's not 92 places that are currently available on their list, only 84 of those, because the rest of the 92 haven't opened. But we've also heard numerically, factually, that's more than the 79 that they need. The other thing is most important of all, that the county still has not given a response to the planning consultation in respect of 7 St Ives Way, or indeed individual other ones. They've given a generic statement about general need. So what we need to hear from the director is the county supporting this specific application? And if so, obviously, they're going to have to account for at some later date at Shire Hall why they're doing that. But well, if they're not supporting it, then they're not supporting it, and they've made a general statement.
I think you've made your point,
Thank you.
Councillor Tromans, okay, even though you shouldn't have, because you're not among the Planning Applications Committee. Okay, I don't know if either of our officers want to come back on that at all, or Mr Minns, whether you want to come back on that at all. You don't have to if you don't wish to.
I think all I can probably say right now is I understand that one of my team has given a response. However, I am not here tonight to do that. I was asked to come here to explain the numbers around sufficiency, and that's what I've done. I don't know enough about this application. I don't know enough about the area or anything to make a comment on the specific application here and now.
No, I mean, obviously, just to clarify, as Nigel has said, we have had a response from his team, which does obviously set down the need, which is what your officers are basing their recommendation on.
So it stands then, so the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the condition change from a C3 to a C2 usage, which is from residential to children's homes. So all those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Okay, that is then passed. Okay, if you would like to leave, if you only came for that one item, we'll just have a couple of minutes break, so if anyone does want to leave, feel free to do so. And then we'll start with the second item. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we could resume our seats, please. This is not a comfort break. This is just to allow members of the public to leave should they wish to do so. Yeah. Okay. What's it? Sorry. Thomas. Is it Tom or Thomas? Thomas. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. So we're now going to go to our second item on 2 Osprey Close. So I'm going to pass over to the safe and capable hands of Thomas. So I know this is your first application that you've sort of read through. So you know, we will listen and we will give you all the help and support we can. So over to you, Thomas, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, could I just ask members of the public, we are now starting the second item. Councillor Tromans, please, if you wish to have a conversation, could you do it out of the chamber, because it's not fair on officers or members who are here to listen to this second item. Thank you.
This application is similar to the previous item on the agenda and is for a change of use from a residential dwelling, use class C3, to a children's home, use class C2, and will provide care for up to 3 children. As part of the change of use, all 5 bedrooms are to be retained, 3 for the children, 1 as a staff bedroom and 1 as an office. Notwithstanding the number of objections received, the application is being reported to committee at the request of Councillor Gutteridge. In terms of the principle of development, the site is located within an established residential estate in Nuneaton. Nuneaton has the primary role within the borough. Policy H1 of the borough plan states that development proposals for specialised housing will be approved where a local need can be demonstrated. Within their responses, Warwickshire County Council have stated that there is a need for children's home placements in the county, and specifically within the Nuneaton. It should be noted that it cannot be guaranteed that this home, if approved, would be used for children through the Warwickshire County Council care framework to specifically meet Warwickshire County Council's need. Within Warwickshire County Council's application for a change of use for C3 to C2 on Staines Close in April 2023, it was stated that 72 Warwickshire children are in residential care placements in a home for children, and that 25 originate from the Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough area address of nearly 35%. At present, only 5 of the total 72 Warwickshire children are looked after in Warwickshire itself. This is less than 7%, with the remaining majority being cared for out of the county. Having homes located in areas where there is need enables children to maintain stability in other areas of life. For example, consistent support from family and friends, education provisions and other access to other universal or specialist support services they may be accessing. Therefore, it is considered that there are clear social benefits associated with the scheme. Whilst some resident objections have stated that children's homes are commercial uses and should not be located within residential areas, it should be clarified that use class C2 is for residential institutions. As such, this is a residential type of use and therefore appropriate to be located within an established residential area. The Minister of State for Housing and Planning produced a statement in May 2023 to advise local authorities regarding accommodating looked after children. The document states that the planning system should not be a barrier to providing homes for the most vulnerable children in society. When care is the best choice for a child, it is important that the care system provides stable, loving homes close to children's communities. The statement also refers to the offset registration process as set out in the guide to the Children's Home Regulations. Under the Care Standards Act 2000, it is an offence to run a children's home without the appropriate registration. The requirement to register helps to prevent unsuitable people from owning, operating, managing or working within children's homes. In relation to residential amenity, the proposal would provide accommodation for up to 3 children with 3 members of staff at any one time. Concerns have been raised by residents with regard to safety, noise and loss of privacy. all of which are considerations which may impact the residential amenity of the area. With regard to noise generated from comings and goings, a very similar application was refused and overturned at appeal in January 2023 in Burnley. The inspector stated that given the scale of the proposal, the noise and disturbance associated with the comings and goings would not be disproportionately or significantly above what could reasonably be expected to be generated by the existing 5-bedroom dwellings. Environmental health have been consulted and have no objection. As such, it is considered that noise impacts associated with the change of use are considered to be of an acceptable level. Some objections have also raised concerns that the children living at the proposed facility would represent a threat to local children and may attract criminals and antisocial behaviour to the area. Warwickshire Police have been consulted and have no objection. In addition, the management of the facility will be required to operate within the national standards for children's homes, and staff will be subject to Ofsted regulation and inspections. Children will be looked after by staff members, and therefore it is considered that sufficient safeguards are in place to minimise the risk of crime for local children and future occupants. As such, it is not considered to be reasonable to refuse the application on this basis. In terms of highway safety, Warwickshire County Council Highways have advised that in order to accord with parking standards, 1 space will be required for the 3 residents and 2 spaces for the total number of staff on site at one time, that being 3 carers and 1 manager. Therefore, a total of 3 spaces are required in order to meet the SPD standards. From the information submitted, it appears that 4 spaces are provided. However, the area that has been block paved is not considered as parking, as the length of area is not enough to allow a vehicle to park without overhanging the public highway. With the block paved area not taken into consideration, 2 parking spaces are provided on site. This is a slight shortfall of 1 space when assessed against the requirements of the SPD. Warwickshire County Council Highways state that the occasional addition of 1 vehicle parking on streets is unlikely to be detrimental to highway safety. Highways have also stated that the demand for on-street parking does not appear to be high and that there are spaces available within an acceptable walking distance. Vehicles may temporarily park on the street whilst the previous shift leaves the site at shift changeover times, but Warwickshire County Council Highways have stated that this is unlikely to detrimentally affect the public highway. Warwickshire County Council Highways have reviewed the proposals and have no objection, subject to conditions. The recommendation is one of approval, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Councillor Gutteridge.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just put the photograph back, please, of the house? I don't think that is to scale, because the drive is not correct. All the block paving.
Is that the house?
That is
the house.
But it's not.
So is it just what you're saying about the angle of the photograph?
It is not to scale. The drive is not like that. It's narrower and shorter. It's the wrong angle.
Right. So are we advised then that it's just sort of stretched at the front then? Okay, so I think that's noted then by members of the committee that is the case.
Can we leave that photograph up while we speak, please?
Yeah, you can have that up, yeah. I mean, are all members of the committee happy with that? Just it's been elongated in terms of just the kind of lens or the angle that they've used. Yeah, so it's a street, it is just a street view, okay, that's been taken. So we are all advised of that fact, and obviously we'll take that into consideration. We'll look at it. Thank you very much for pointing that out to us.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cape.
Just to be absolutely clear, is that a double car length, or is it a single car length?
No, mate. That's it.
Okay.
So it's completely out.
Stop. No, we're going to go and do this in order now, Councillor Guttridge, because we've got speakers, and we can come back to this when we come to the conversation, the discussion. At the moment, I've got 5 speakers that I need to get through, and we will come back to the photo as and when required.
I'll be brief.
Well, no, Councillor Guttridge, you're going to have your time to speak, okay, and we'll tackle it at the appropriate juncture. Okay, it's been raised, it's been noted, which is fine. I've got no problem with that. But you will I will give you an opportunity, obviously, in your 3 minutes to say what you need to say, because I know you've indicated to speak. So I've got 5 speakers, and I'll start with Mr. Bowers, followed by Mr. Colley. Thank you. So you've got your 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. This is not simply a question of a dwelling change for you to consider. This is a significant change in the local neighbourhood. This is a small close with 11 properties with residents who have, with the exception of a recent sale, been living together for over 10 years in a very quiet, unassuming and harmonious manner. The impact of this application being approved would shatter this environment beyond probable repair. Ask yourselves, please, is there a real need for this facility within a small, quiet neighbourhood where the age demographic is aligned to those who are potentially placed in a property suited for a family, not a care home? There have been concerns raised over the lack of parking space, the increase in road traffic in and around the surrounding area. This is a close where there are no pathways, there are no pedestrian walkways, there are limited lighting points, there is no communal area. This is potential for accidents and incidents in this area is already high. With this application, it remains even higher. You have to consider the residents' security. This has to be paramount in your considerations, and I'm urging you to focus on that fact. There are residents who are by age and medical conditions considered vulnerable. There are residents in their 70s, 80s and 90s who deserve the right to a quiet life and environment in an area of their choosing and not one that brings with it, through no choice of their own, an environment that could threaten property damage, groups of adolescents hanging around who just by their very presence can be extremely threatening. The original application identified a 1 to 2 care situation for 3 children. This has subsequently been reduced by 33% to a 2 carer to 3 children position. This will only succeed in a further significant increase to risk and health and safety of all. It is stated by the applicant that these children will have mild learning disability and emotional behavioural disorders. These, from personal experience, are children who are difficult to manage, for want of a better expression, impossible to control. You have a group of individuals who are not a family unit. They are placed together in an environment where they have no common ground, no parental control for the carers, no authority, and those carers are quite probably no desire to tackle what could become dangerous and threatening positions. Finally, I would just like to address the language that's been used in the applications. I found it extremely emotive, focusing on family units and children's. It identifies the applicant as a keen and passionate person about the care of children, all designed, no doubt, to tear at the heartstrings of every reader. However, the applicant has told neighbours of his desire to move away and is looking to place the management of this dwelling to a third-party care company, and is asking you to approve an application that he is likely to walk away from and never be seen again. Committee, I ask you to consider all the points that have been raised previously through all the objections of the people who live in your jurisdiction, and not consider an application by someone who has already stated an intent to leave. Further to this, I can only answer a couple of things that have been brought up this evening. You mentioned about community support. In the public gallery, you can see 8 different locations from Osprey Close who are here, and every one of those rejects this and has objected to it. If you are going to stay in there and object and not support this, then you need to object it. Putting your hands on your feet and not voting is really something that should not happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers. Anyone got any points of clarification they would like to ask? No? Okay, we'll move on to our next speaker, which is Mr. Colley. Over to you. You've got 3 minutes when you're ready.
Our argument is there wasn't a proven need for this type of establishment in this area, as the WCC confirmed that they were not promoting this application. Also, we believe that Osprey Close isn't an ideal place for a child care home. Osprey Close is a small close made up of 14 properties which has no pavements or no street parking. The majority of residents are elderly and are used to living in a quiet environment. In fact, apart from the children currently living at number 2, there are no other children in the close as far as I'm aware. Any businesses in the close will involve extra traffic and parking problems. Planning suggests that there is off-street parking nearby. This only moves the problem and is not a long-term solution. The roads are also narrow around the close and cars tend to park on the pavement. This causes problems for mobility scooters and pushchairs for people trying to navigate around the vehicle, which we have found on a number of occasions when pushing our grandson in his pushchair and we've had to go on the road to get round it. Also, depending where the cars are parked on the adjacent road, this can cause blind spots for access in and out of Osprey Close and also Gores Farm Road. I would strongly recommend that the committee come and have a look at the road situation before making a decision. There are no local children's facilities in the area, no playgrounds nearby. The closest play area is Paulsland, which is approximately 1 mile away. The planning department state that the looked after children are no more noisy or disruptive than other family with children. However, I'm not sure how they can claim this, as we do not know the ages of the children planned to be housed there or the severity of their problems. What is hard to swallow is as taxpayers, the fact that there are 51 objections from 30 households, including an objection letter from the local MP against this proposal, appear not to carry any weight into consideration for this proposal. I think it is totally unfair that a person working off his own back can change the use of his property after a period where he has failed to sell the house and put a planning proposal in for a childcare home. Where in this modern age are there rights for the residents who have lived in the close for many years? Surely they must have a major say in this, especially when the amount of objections are raised. Private children's homes are run for profit and by all accounts can be extremely profitable. The costs of these homes take valuable resources from council budgets and is using taxpayers' money to finance the profits from this type of establishment, which in turn can make their owners over £100,000 a year. This is a profit-driven scheme using well-earned taxpayers' money, especially in the present climate when every pound counts. Surely there must be another, more economical way than lining the pockets of owning these properties, and lining the pockets of people owning these properties. Should we therefore be going down this line of granting more private homes when the best homes should be about the care and well-being of children and not down to how much profit that can be made from these vulnerable children?
You just turn your microphone off. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Colley. Can I ask, do any members have any points of clarification? No, I have one question for you, Mr. Colley. You talked about sort of like parking issues in the street. Can you just tell me, are there any double yellow lines in the streets?
There isn't any double yellow lines, no.
Is there any other sort of either traffic calming measures or anything else to?
Not around by us, but the roads are very small, you see.
Right, okay. So just like your traditional cul-de-sac.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
In fact, Osprey Close is probably smaller than a lot.
I think I live in one of those kind of closes myself,
okay.
so yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, the next speaker then will be Councillor Gutteridge. So Councillor Gutteridge, I think you know the rules by now.
Hopefully. Could we have the picture put up, please? Thank you. Start the clock. I am the ward councillor for Whitestone and I am against this application at 2 Osprey Close for a change of use to a residence dwelling for a children's home. As you can see, we have 53 objections and one for our MP, Marcus Jones. So that shows the concern, disappointment, fears and upset the residents of Osprey Close and surrounding areas fear. In fact, we have more objections than they have for some of the major planning developments. Osprey Close is a small cul-de-sac with approximately 11 houses, with some elderly residents. There are no pavements and a sharp bend and a small council shrub bed, which you can just see there if it was correctly done. Small shrub bed by number 2. So parking is a problem. Number 2 has a small drive suitable for 2 cars and a block pave in front. I'd like to draw members of the committees to the agenda of item 3. I hope you can all read it, please, because it brings up the block paving which we cannot use for parking because it overstretches onto the highway. Number 2 has a small drive suitable for 2 cars. Item 3, impact on highway safety and parking. And I quote, Warwickshire Highways have advised that in order to accord with MBBC parking standards, 1 space would be required for 3 residents and 2 spaces for the total number of staff at one time, that being 3 carers and 1 manager. Therefore, a total of 3 spaces are required in order to meet the SPD standards, which is written in the agenda in item 3. I draw the committee's attention to item 3, page 33, about parking offside, and I strongly disagree with highways. When they park offside, what happens on bin day with the bins? Also with the children, mobility scooters. There is a lady there who needs care in the close. And what happens with the dustbin lorry? Worst case scenario. What happens if we need a fire engine, an ambulance in an emergency? Education. The schools in the area are oversubscribed, so that means we have to educate outside more car journeys. We do not know the age of the children in the premises or their abilities. Paul's Land, as my colleagues have said here, is 1 to 1.5 metres away. 1.5 miles away, sorry. So, also we have Thornhill Swamp just up the road, and I will finish in a minute, please. So, before you make a decision, I ask for the residents of Osprey Close and surrounding areas, you have a site visit to view the problems this application will cause, and the picture is incorrect, and you could get the bearings, and there is no picture on the site of the paperwork there. So I ask for the residents a site visit, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Guttridge. Can I ask, has anyone got any points of clarification they would like to ask from Councillor Guttridge? No? Okay, thank you, Councillor Guttridge. And we'll maybe come back and look at that request later on. Okay, I've now got my next speaker, which is Dr. Miriam Masood. So, Dr. Masood, you have your 3 minutes when you are ready.
Thank you. So first I want to thank the council members for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm here not as the applicant, but a supporter. I'm a GP and also director of a children's company that started 6 years ago in Derbyshire. I came with a whole speech all typed up and proper, but listened to what the council said, and hence why I put my hand up earlier. And listened to what the Director of Children's Services said. There's something that I want to make everyone aware of. So I'm completely going off my speech. I'm open to questions at the end of it. Children's homes, I completely understand where the residents, and I really can sympathise with you and what you're saying. It's the unknown. Yes, I get that. You know, you're fearful of what might come into this home. Children are children. You know, I'm here as an advocate for children and their voice. I started this company 6 years ago as a GP when I had a child come into my surgery with a carer, and I actually thought, I can look after you better than what you're being looked after. We've currently, in our homes in Derbyshire, we've got 3 children from Warwickshire, and for the first 2 years, we brought the children from South Derbyshire all the way to their school in Coventry. So, coming back to what the director was saying earlier, if there was homes in your area, then there wouldn't be a need for them to come to my homes in South Derbyshire. So coming back to the Ofsted, Ofsted is a regulatory body like anyone else, like the council is. All children's homes are accountable to Ofsted. So before the whole process of opening a children's home is really thorough, I'm trying to make the residents really reassure them. They look at everything. They look at the location risk assessment. They look at the statement of purpose, which has to submit. They look at the suitability of the staff, the manager, the responsible individual. They look at the integrity of the person in charge. You know, they thoroughly vet these people before they even open the home. And then what they do is they come inspect the home, and the inspection process itself is a really thorough full-day inspection, going through all the policies, procedures, staff training, suitability, and at that point they will tell the manager and whoever's owning the company if they're suitable and how many children they will allow to come into that home. At that point, then Ofsted will allow, and you have to do a location risk assessment and a thorough matching before the child even comes into the home. That paperwork is then sent on the children's file and Ofsted review that paperwork when they come to inspect. And a minimum inspection is once a year. If they're concerned about anything about a children's home, they will come sooner. They will come within the 6 months framework. Okay, so that's just a bit of reassurance for the councillors, but also to the residents as well. Sorry, I just want to say one thing, and it's really brief. The children in Dame Rachel Souza's report in 2021 was asked to capture the voice of children. And what children said, they just wanted a healthy life where they can thrive and build strong relationships with grown-ups and live into their adult life. So what I'm asking you all to do today is, as well as Osprey Close, work with the children's home, give them an opportunity. You know, the council, the home will work with you. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say today.
Thank you, Dr. Masood.
I'm open to questions, by the way.
Yeah, well, sorry, it's not questions from the public. It's questions from the. No, I'm sorry. It's questions from the public, from the planning application committee. So, can I ask, has anyone got any points of clarification that they would like to ask?
Chair, can I ask?
No, you may not, Councillor Guttridge. You know the rules. Well, you can talk over me, but I'll ask you to leave, Councillor. No, it's not how this works, Councillor Guttridge, as well, you know, and I'd ask you to show me the courtesy that I would show you. I appreciate you're passionate on this, okay, and a lot of residents are, but this is not how the committee works. So, is there any points of clarification that any member wants? Yes. No, I'm sorry. It's not how this works. I'm sorry. We're going completely off track. I'm trying to be as lenient as I can. Okay. If you have questions, I would ask that you perhaps speak with Dr. Masood afterwards and ask her those questions then. What I'm trying to do is afford the members of the planning application committee the opportunity to ask and clear anything up in their minds, because they're the ones who are going to be asked to vote in a minute on this. Councillor Green.
Thank you. Do you mind my asking what's your actual relationship with the person who's setting up this home?
I have no personal relationship. I have no conflict. I have nothing. I've worked with the Jim in the past. And hence why he mentioned it was, and I've come along. Okay, so I have that I can declare. You can have it on record. There's no direct conflict of interest. I work in a similar framework as a GP, so I know how it is. So I can declare that. You can have that on the minutes as well. Okay, I hope that reassures you.
Yeah, no, that wasn't really what I was after. Really, it was. Your knowledge of the situation, really. So, has the applicant set up any homes personally before, etc., or is this a first-time venture?
I think Jim's going to go into that when you give him the opportunity to speak. I'm sorry. Okay. If there's any questions after that, I'm more than happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Masood. Yeah, we'll possibly come back depending on what comes up in our conversation, and say if members do have any questions, obviously at the appropriate time to ask any of the speakers, then that's fine. Okay, sorry, Dr. Masood, I do need to move on now.
Okay, sorry.
Because time is a ticking. I'd like to ask Mr. Malkin, who is the agent for the development.
Many thanks for the opportunity to speak in support of our client's application this evening. The application proposes the conversion of the existing property to a children's care home. The proposed property will be occupied by 3 children, alongside between 2 and 4 carers working alternate shift patterns. On-site care will obviously be provided at all times. Your officer's very detailed report, the presentation that we've received, and also the comments of Mr. Minns set out clearly the planning merits of the proposal and the material considerations upon which planning committee can make their decision, and obviously the initial debate on item 1 as well. The property will be occupied in a very similar way to other dwellings on the estate. Vehicle movements will not exceed those of a typical residential property, and this is agreed by the Highway Authority and raising no objections. There's been some debate around the photograph, but obviously members will be able to see that there is clearly space for 4 cars on there. And should they be minded?
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate this is highly an emotive point, but I do need to ask that we allow Mr. Malkin the right to speak. Okay, you know, he's at the end of the day, give his vote. He sat there patiently waiting and listening to other people that he may not agree with. I'd please ask that you give him the same consideration. Please remember what I said at the start. Please let's be kind and courteous to one another. I know these things often get very emotive, and let's try and just take that emotion out of this a little bit, please. Mr. Malkin.
Should members be minded, they can require a condition requiring up to 3 to 4 spaces to be provided, and it will be up to members to decide whether this is necessary. So having been involved in a number of similar applications, we are acutely aware and often exasperated about how such proposals can be perceived by the local community. The applicants are committed to operating the home to the highest standards in accordance with the stringent legislation that covers the proposed operations, as well as being fully inspected by Ofsted. The applicants are also committed to working alongside Warwickshire County Council to ensure the home is used, hopefully to meet a locally identified need for such facilities. And I think we've heard from Mr Minns that there is an identified need for such facilities. The home will provide a safe space for children to develop and grow in a non-institutionalised environment. Each child will have a specific care package followed during time in care. In terms of education, this may include homeschooling, mainstream schooling, or attendance at a specialist education facility. The aim is to enable children in care to live as normal lives as possible within the community. The operation of such homes creates a family-orientated environment where children thrive and achieve positive outcomes. Small homes, such as the one proposed as part of this application, play a significant role in the government's approach to the care of children with emotional, behavioural and learning difficulties. Set out in the officer's report, as recently as May 2023, the government published a ministerial statement advising that the planning system should not be a barrier to the provision of homes for the most vulnerable children. On the basis of the above, we very much hope that we will follow the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission for this proposal, which will provide a much-needed facility for disadvantaged children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Malkin. Could I just ask, has anyone got any points of clarification? Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just to clarify, you made a statement about parking there. I mean, it is one of the contentious issues. Am I right in thinking, were we to condition that you expand that parking space to accommodate the 3 required, you would do that?
Yeah, we can assure that any condition that members deem necessary will be complied with by the applicant.
Okay, do I have any other member? No. Okay, so in that case, the recommendation in front of us is to grant planning permission to turn this from a C3 to a childcare unit class C2. And that's obviously subject to conditions. So I need a proposer and a seconder so we can move to the debate. Councillor Smith and Councillor Baxter Payne. Thank you very much. So do I have any members? Councillor Smith.
Yes, I very much. I don't want to go over the whole thing I went over in the first one. My views on the principles are pretty much there. I'd like to take them up on their offer in terms of that condition, because I think it will ease the situation if there's no parking on the road. So if that's okay, if Assistant Director Bailey can let me know if that sort of condition would be acceptable to expand the parking to meet our SPD.
I am being told, and forgive me because I've just had to check on this, because obviously the key for the answer to your question was that if they could actually fit 3 parking spaces on the land that's available, and I understand they can't because of the overhanging in terms of it. So if we were to condition it, it looks like it couldn't be implemented by the sound of things.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor Smith? Yeah. Okay, do I have any other members? Councillor Hammersley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, this sort of echoes the last, but we're taking this one on its own. There are very similar things. But if I could just ask Highways, please, if they are happy with the parking arrangements, stroke, no footpaths, etc., if they are happy with increased traffic or parking doesn't seem suitable on the road, there are no footpaths, if they are happy with what they've seen and it's acceptable for the property. Thank you, Chair.
If you look at that drawing, sorry, the picture, where you're looking at the for sale sign, just to the left of it, you will see a curb line. That's the extent of highway, and that will extend to beyond the lamp column. So where you can see the lamp column, that is in the highway. So from the lamp column to the carriageway, to the road, that's highway as well. From the lamp column back to the house, that's private. So obviously the depth doesn't allow for a full-size parking space. Smaller cars could park on there, but only smaller cars. We wouldn't recognise that as a parking space.
Thank you, Mr Burrows. Councillor Hamza, you got the follow-up question or statement?
Yes, thank you. I'm just perplexed then why that stony area from the lamppost forward is not a footpath if it's highways, and why it appears, you correct me if I'm wrong, to have been claimed up to the edge of the road by the house. So either it's highways and they've had permission to do that, or it's not highways and they shouldn't have done that. If you could explain that for me, please. Thank you.
Yes, anything that's within the highway extent would require permission. Now, that looks as though the work has been carried out without permission.
Just again, for clarification, now highways are aware that that has probably been done without permission. Are highways likely to say, Mr Resident, Mr House Owner, could you please reinstate that to how it should be prior to what you've done now? Would now you're aware of it, will there be any further action from highways to reinstate it to how it should be? Thank you.
What I'll do is I will report that to our colleagues in County Highways who are responsible for maintaining the highway in the condition it should be.
Thank you, Mr Burrows. Councillor Hammers, have you got any further questions or points? No. Any other members? Councillor Cape.
It kind of ties in with the last couple of questions, because if we've got on page 32 and 33 a statement that it doesn't meet the SPD of the council, and in light of the fact that it seems that there's been a breach of WCC regulations as well, where are we actually on the suitability for parking and it not actually having an impact on the health and safety of residents and indeed the health and safety of the children that would be living there? I would request that we have a site visit and some follow-up information from WCC based on the fact that there has been these alterations gone on, and with some kind of study into how that will impact the safety of the whole area.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that from the chair as well. I think to defer the matter, so one, that we can do a site visit, and secondly, so that colleagues at Warwickshire County Council's highways have time to look at this and perhaps give us some further guidance at a future meeting. So I'd be happy to do that. So I'd second that if you're happy to take those on. Yeah. Okay. So do I have any other speakers before we go to that vote, or we'll just go to that vote? As not seeing any other hands. So those in favour of deferring it, okay, and a site visit. Okay, so that's unanimous. So we'll defer this item and we'll get that into the book so we can go and actually see it for ourselves, and obviously allow colleagues from Warwickshire County Council's highways to go and have a look and sort of give us some further guidance on the matter as it stands. So that matter is now deferred. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. If you wish to leave because you only want to listen to that item, please feel free to do so. And we'll have a 5-minute adjournment. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can we resume our seats and look to start with the next minute, please, for our final item? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can we take our seats, please? We've got one more item. Come along, Councillor Hammersley, that includes you. You can tell I'm a teacher, can't you? It was, wasn't it? No detention. I'm on summer holiday. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we've got everyone that's going to be here. So we'll move to our third and final item of the evening. So I'll hand back over to Darren now, who will talk us through it. So over to you, Darren, when you're ready.
Thanks very much, Chair. This application is for a full planning permission for the erection of 122 residential dwellings on the site of the former Bedworth Bowling and Rugby Club on Smarts Road in Bedworth. The site constitutes a mixture of brownfield and greenfield land within the residential with the residential streets of Dalton Road to the north, Rectory Drive to the east, and Down Meadow and Smarts Road to the south. Down Meadow is part of the recent Taylor Wimpey development, and to the west is the A444 carriageway and Hollyhurst. The site was previously used as a bowling and rugby club with associated pitches and bowling greens. The bowling greens were last used in 2020, and the rugby club vacated the site in 2017. It is understood that the rugby club now use the facilities at Nicholas Chamberlain School in Bedworth, and the members of the bowls team have joined other local clubs. The key issues to assess during the assessment of this planning application are the principle of the development, affordable housing, visual amenity and landscape character, residential amenity, highway safety and accessibility, flood risk and drainage, contamination and land stability, air quality and noise, ecology, open space and biodiversity, and heritage and archaeology, along with any planning obligations. In regard to the principle of the development, the site is within the settlement boundary as set out in the Borough Plan. The site is not allocated for housing development in the plan, and as such it is classified as a windfall site. The site is a mixture of greenfield and brownfield development and is currently disused sports pitches. Since the former uses are classified as community uses, policy HS4 in the plan is relevant, and it states that development for the loss of community uses will only be permitted in certain circumstances. These include the demonstration that the demand is no longer there for the uses, and this is felt to be an exception in this case. The bowling greens are no longer in use, and according to the playing pitch strategy that's adopted, as well as a statement assessing the current need, the need for bowling pitches is adequately met elsewhere. In regard to the rugby playing pitches, although the pitches here would be lost, it is important to note that the club moved in 2017, and as part of the residential development here, the planning obligations will secure £1.25 million to pay for improvements to those pitches at Nicholas Chamberlain School. Sport England have confirmed, and it's echoed in policy HS6, that with this enhanced and better quality pitches from the monies that come through here, this will offset the loss in actual number of pitches, so there is actually more matches possible locally. The entire site will be 100% affordable housing units. Only 25% of those will be secured for nomination rights by the council, though, and that will be through a Section 106, and that's compliant with policy. The 25% council-nominated units are spread throughout the site as required by the adopted guidance, and this is compliant with policy too. In regard to landscape character, The TEP landscape character study, which informed the borough plan on the value of landscape across the borough, suggested taking this site forward back before the plan was adopted. There are residential dwellings surrounding the site, so the proposal will blend in terms of character and will not contrast its surroundings. The houses are all two-storey and are to be a mix of detached, semi-detached and terraced units. Proposed materials consist of various facing brick. The properties include detailed architectural features such as headers and sills and string course detailing. Corner plots are dual aspect and dwellings face onto roads where necessary. Overall, it is considered that the impact on visual amenity and landscape character is acceptable. In regard to the impact on residential amenity, the properties are all arranged so as to offer a good level of amenity. There are some minor shortfalls to the adopted standards throughout the site, but there is mitigation for these where they exist. In accordance with the adopted guidance, 35% of the site is required to meet with section M42 of the building regulations, and this is accommodated on site. The internal space standards set out in the SPD are also met. Overall, therefore, the impact on residential amenity is felt to be acceptable. In regard to the impact on highway safety, the car parking provision on site is considered to be acceptable. The site benefits from good public transport links, and the site provides an emergency access to the southeast corner of the site onto Rectory Drive. Warwickshire County Council requests for planning obligations totalling just over £33,000 towards the County Council improvements to the Longford Road corridor have been made, and these have been agreed by the applicant. The county have also requested a contribution in conjunction with Highways England for £130,000 for improvements to the M6 Junction 3. There will also be an application to the County Council for a traffic regulation order in order to control the speed of traffic nearby. The fees for this are accepted by the applicant and will be included in any Section 106 agreement. Overall, with the requested contributions, County Council Highways have no objection to the scheme in regard to highway safety. In regard to the impact on flood risk, a flood risk assessment was submitted with the application. The Environment Agency have reviewed the application and have no objections. Also, in terms of surface water drainage, the County Council Flood Risk team have no objection, and in regard to sewerage, Severn Trent Water have not responded and are therefore assumed to have no objection. Consequently, therefore, the proposal's impact on flood risk is felt to be acceptable. In regard to contamination and land stability, the Coal Authority have no objection to the scheme following consultation. The Environment Agency have requested a condition relating to contamination, and NBBC Environmental Health have also requested conditions relating to contamination, which would be added to any approval. In regard to air quality, an air quality impact assessment was submitted, and NBBC Environmental Health are content with its findings. A noise assessment was submitted with the scheme too, and EH are also content with that and have no objection to the scheme subject to conditions relating to the mitigation of noise. In regard to ecology, open space and biodiversity, an ecological assessment and an arboricultural assessment have been submitted. The ecological statements set out that there is likely to be no adverse impact on designated and non-statutory wildlife sites. It also stated that the site is unlikely to contain protected species. However, bat evidence was found nearby, so 2 trees most likely to harbour them are being retained. The arboricultural assessment and the submitted plans show that hard surfacing but no built development will be within some root protection areas of some trees. The proposed dwellings and gardens are all outside of root protection areas, and a condition will be added so that the root areas are treated appropriately with no dig construction methods where necessary. NBBC Parks do not object on principle to the scheme, but they do object about the loss of the southern hedgerow. The plans have been amended to reduce this loss as much as possible, but the loss of some of the hedge is necessary to facilitate the emergency access onto Rectory Drive. A revised landscaping plan is to be required by condition so as to ensure that the site makes the most of its planting and landscaping scheme. In regard to biodiversity, the latest set of calculations which show a loss of biodiversity on the site have been sent to NBBC Parks, but with no full response made yet. Parks have highlighted, however, that the costs to offset this loss could be significant. The applicant is content to pay for off-site biodiversity offsetting in order to mitigate the loss. And as discussed on the agenda, this is often a last resort for biodiversity, but on this occasion it is felt to be necessary. The exact total has not been agreed yet, but the applicant has agreed in principle to pay this, and this would be included in any Section 106 agreement. In regard to archaeology and heritage, there are no designated heritage assets on site. Warwickshire County Council Archaeology have requested a condition that ensure that a programme of archaeological fieldwork is carried out, and this will be added to any approval. A variety of contributions have been requested and are considered still compliant, including over £100,000 for the NHS, over £350,000 for county council infrastructure, over £250,000 for sports development, and a host of other obligations like open space, biodiversity, highways improvements, and the £1.25 million for Bedworth Rugby Club improvements, and of course the affordable housing provision already mentioned. As can be seen from the agenda, these have all been agreed with the applicant. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to conditions and a legal agreement as set out on the agenda. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Darren. I now have two speakers. First one is Mr. Peter Smith, who I don't see in the chamber. So we'll go on to Mr. Andrew Tilsley, who is the agent. So you have your 3 minutes when you're ready, Mr. Tilsley.
Yes, thank you, committee, for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Andrew Tilsley, planning consultant for the applicant's Countryside Partnerships. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank your officers for the thorough planning assessment set out in the report before you. We're in full agreement with the report's findings, and I would like to quickly summarise the key planning matters. The land is classified as white land. It carries no designation in the local plan. The site has been ranked by officers as being highly sustainable, being well located in the centre of Bedworth. The land has not been in use as sports pitches since 2017 and is classified by Sport England as disused. The local plan, adopted in 2019, requires windfall sites, and this site, being a windfall site, will make a valuable contribution to the council's housing delivery. Work on the new local plan and the new evidence base has begun, and as the officer report highlights, the current pitches are assessed in the playing pitch strategy as surplus to requirements. And also the site is currently being listed for a housing allocation for consideration in the next borough plan. So we believe the technical planning arguments strongly support the grant of planning permission. But putting technical matters aside, what I wanted to take is a moment to reflect on the key reasons why you should support this proposal. I'm sure you're all aware of the Bedworth Rugby Club situation. A letter, I believe, has been circulated which was provided by the club in support of this application. Bedworth Rugby Football Club need and deserve better facilities at their new home at Nicholas Chamberlain School. The ambitions of this project, shared by the landowner, shared by Countryside and by the Rugby Football Union, are to release monies from this development to deliver a brand new clubhouse, changing room facilities, floodlighting and other improvements at the club's new home. The £1.25 million contribution is a huge milestone in the club's history, and it will ensure the future is bright and that one of Bedworth's sporting institutions has the facilities it needs to survive, thrive and achieve its full potential. On a final note, I also wanted to reference the wide range of other significant positive elements to consider. The application delivers policy-compliant 25% affordable housing, with the balance of the site being managed flexibly by the registered provider Middle and Hart in perpetuity for affordable housing needs. The development delivers a good mix of house types. There will be improved cycle and pedestrian links that will be incorporated into the scheme, including an off-site crossing on Smarts Lane. The layout itself offers areas of landscaping and noise attenuation measures have been agreed. The development of this scale is also recognised to bring a wide range of economic benefits for the local economy. And I also think we should mention the further Section 106 payments are amounting to around £2.5 million, which will also be made for a range of infrastructure, health, sports and highways contributions. These are all positive material planning considerations, and I invite the committee to consider the application and put their support behind a scheme delivering significant local community benefits. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Any points of clarification required? No? Okay, so in that case, we'll move to the recommendation in front of us, which is to grant planning permission subject to a legal agreement and the conditions as printed. Do I have a proposer? Okay, Councillor Hammersley, and a seconder, Councillor Markham. So I'll open the floor now to any members. Councillor Cape.
It's one of clarification, really. On page 48, my eyesight's going, I'm getting old. There's a bit of confusion for me because halfway down the page it says that Sports England have said that increased membership would have to require improvement to pitches elsewhere in the borough. So that's a fact that I read. I then read the next 5 paragraphs which say that they don't think that the S106 funding is still compliant. However, Sports England stated that it was a requirement to improve bowling pitches. I think it's fantastic that rugby's been improved. I'm a rugby player, but my mother-in-law was a bowling champion in Nuneaton, and I have to say that it feels that perhaps bowling has been kind of subjugated somewhat in this report. And although no legal requirement seems to exist for the S106, it would just have been nice to see something specifically allocating the requirement for Sport England to an improvement of pitches in the borough to be mentioned in there.
Okay, anyone want to have any comeback on any of that at all?
Just regard to the bowls situation, the current playing pitch strategy and the emerging one, which is going to cabinet tomorrow, both say that there is sufficient bowls provision locally. So any new demand created can be absorbed with the current setup. In regard to Sport England's comments, they have maintained their objection because of the loss of the pitches, and that's in spite of the improvements elsewhere, but they have confirmed that overall there will be more matches able to be played on improved pitches, even though these are lost. But I think they're sort of duty bound to maintain their objection based on the loss of these pitches. I hope that sort of answers your question, but feel free to ask again if I haven't.
Yeah, just to add to that, obviously in terms of sort of going back to bowls, again, it's based on evidence, and the evidence that Darren has quoted is that there isn't the need, and without the need, unfortunately, we can't ask for any contribution, and obviously that's why there is substantial contribution to sport, but that's all focused on the rugby side of things because that's where the evidence base has basically said the need is, and we can only ask for contributions where there is a need identified.
Of course, in a perfect world, people could voluntarily contribute.
Right, thank you. Councillor Hamsley, then Councillor Markham.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Being an ex-Bedworth rugby player then, okay, I've run around that pitch and etc, etc. I mean, the history of that area was, it was the site where the rectory stood years ago. That's why it's called Rectory Drive. Then it was waste ground or just grass. And then Bedworth Rugby Club was formed as Nicholas Chamberlain Old Boys. And then the ground was owned by a local builder called Mr. Jewis. And he was the one that the rugby club had the lease from. They were sort of given the lease for a length of time because building houses on that site was worthless. So hence the rugby club stayed there until all of a sudden fortunes turned and the land then become very worthwhile selling to a developer, which I assume is the Countryside Partnership from Mr. Jewis. Hence, they were given the marching orders of once you've finished at the end of that particular year, you're off. There was no extension, no nothing. So in 2017, they had nowhere to go. They were just given their orders to go. So hence why it's taken up to 5 years, why that period has lapsed, although they are now gone back to the roots at Nicholas Chamberlain School. The bowling club also, they were given an extra 12 months, but locally there was only one other bowling club in the area which couldn't accommodate because they had 2 greens, bowling greens, at that place, and they had 4 teams. So there was nowhere local for them to go. So they just had to disband, which was a shame because they were well known, a large area. So fantastic that that it is going to be built on and put back to life. I know you've had issues with water, surface drainage, etc., and Warwick has also had their say with parking issues, dust carts turning, and so I'm assuming these have all been resolved with highways. He may or may not be able to confirm from me if they have been resolved. And there's also, yeah, I thought there may have been, issues with residents in Smarts Road. I'm assuming that is the entry exit at the moment, Smarts Road, if you can confirm that. Yes, yeah. Again, there is always issues. We need houses, but not in my backyard. We all know that, the saying. But they're worried about the amount of properties now down the end of Smarts Road, with the amount of traffic going up with speeding issues. So I'm not sure, highways, if that has been looked into, or if you have to, or if you don't. Again, that's down to the developer. If highways say there is no issue, there'll be nothing done. But I'm only quoting like locals' problems. So fantastic that Section 106 money is going to help again with the hopefully new development of rugby club. But getting back to just this, I commend that I have no problem supporting this with the hope that the Section 106 money will help in the area. But the bowling club, there was a need, but unfortunately they had nowhere to go. So only my comments, only my history of what it was, what it is now, and hopefully we can look forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hammersley. I don't know, Mr Burrows, if you'd like to come back on any of the issues raised there by Councillor Hammersley.
In the initial road safety audit, manoeuvring around the site was brought up, but that was partially my fault because I didn't supply our review team with the swept path analysis, but it also required extra swept path analysis. So I'll give you a copy, you can have a look at that. I don't believe the refuse team, the cleansing team, have objected either, but we've got the evidence here saying that they can turn around in the turning heads as they're supposed to. Now, regarding speeding along Smarts Road, I think it's condition 24. The applicants have agreed to traffic calming along Smarts Road, and that should alleviate a lot of the problems, and it will be designed to try and control the speeds as much as possible, but still allow emergency vehicles suitable access to the site. So we have looked at it.
Thank you very much, Mr Burrows. That was very, very helpful. Councillor Markham, then Councillor Smith.
Yeah, you may have just answered the question, actually. In the 106 list, there is there £6,000 for 20 mile an hour speed limit. I just wondered where that speed limit was. Is that going to be Smarts Road then, or is it going to be the estate? Can you tell me where it's likely to be, please?
Warwickshire are in the process of updating their design guide, and as part of the design guide, we're trying to get all residential streets to 20 miles an hour. If sometimes you can't do it, so it will need a speed limit. And at the moment, we're taking monies, which is the £6,000, implementing the speed limits within these new estates. So hopefully all new estates coming forward will have 20 miles an hour.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. That's just answered one of my questions, actually. I really welcome this 20 mile an hour and traffic calming. I think it's something should have been done a while ago. And as these new estates come forward, particularly the bigger ones, I think it's essential we do that sort of work. I'd like to see that in recently approved Bulkington sites, And if nothing else, that'll cut out a rat run on those Bulkington sites. Anyway, that question's been answered. Are they? Oh, perfect. You've just answered another question. I'd just like to make the point to committee. I'm quite happy overall with this application, but I'm really happy that the whole application is for affordable housing. We have a crisis in this borough for affordable housing. In the recent sub-regional HEDNA, it called for 409 houses a year across the borough, and 407 of those as a need should be affordable housing. So for us to get a site come forward that is 100% affordable is a real bonus, and it'll go a long way towards meeting some of that need, at least for 1 year anyway. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Do I have any other members? I'm not seeing anyone indicating, in which case we'll go to the vote. All those in favour of granting planning permission? Okay, so that is carried unanimously. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. I'll now bring this meeting to a close. Thank you for your attendance to members of the committee and members of the public, and also colleagues from Warwickshire County Council. Have a safe journey home.